So I need to check that.
I've been told if you set the dial at 11 that it's a louder.
Well, I don't have a dial. David, let me know if it's
There's your
louder now.
problem.
David, let me know if it's louder now. Minus, yeah. David's the one complaining about it, so you can blame him for any of this.
Damn it, David.
Damn it, David. It's louder. All right, let me know if I need to turn it down or turn it up, whatever. However you guys want to do it. All right, we're going to get this going because I got to eat dinner. I don't know about you guys. I haven't eaten dinner yet. All right. So welcome to understanding the new HIPAA security rules. I am going through this because I work in a healthcare organization. But with that being said, because I and others in this group work for healthcare companies, I think we should put this disclaimer here. The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the presenters and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions or positions of their employer or affiliated organization. So, that being said, let's move on. So this is what we have for today, introduction and timeline. We'll do an overview of the new proposal, key changes and implications, how this impacts organizations, and then feel free doing a QA throughout. I'll be watching chat for YouTube, so let me know your thoughts there. Anyone in the Google Meet, feel free to just interrupt me. You can raise your hand or you can just come off mute and interrupt me. I will not get offended and ask a question or interject, whatever you want. Adam will show you the way on this, by the way.
What if I ask something deeply stupid?
I can't help you there.
We would expect it.
All right. So, what is HIPAA? So, just for anybody that doesn't know, HIPAA is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. It is a federal law enacted in 1996 to present sensitive patient health information. It is HIPAA with two A's, not two P's. People will often spell it with two P's instead of two A's.
That's because of Hippo.
Yes, that's why we have the HIPAA Hippo, which you will see later. It's like our cat meme, but for HIPAA. The key objectives of a HIPAA is to ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of electronic protected health information, establish safeguards to prevent unauthorized access and breaches, improve trust and accountability in the handling of patient data. Why it matters.
You okay there, buddy?
Yeah, I had a little burp, little non-alcoholic burp. Protects patient privacy and promotes high standards of data security in healthcare, helps the organization avoid legal penalties and maintain compliance, and is essential for building and maintaining patient trust in the digital world. So that's HIPAA. Very boring. So why this new proposal? The HIPAA Act came out in, as I mentioned, the 90s. It was updated in 2003 and then updated in 2013. Again, last year being 2023, they've decided to update it again. A large part of this is, this is all from their proposal, is they've seen a cost of a breach has increased by 50% since 2020. Data breaches in healthcare are more expensive than any other sectors, and then the average cost of a breach is $10.1 million. For anyone dealing with medical identity theft, that cost is about $13,500 for each individual to recover from. So, high impact. Attackers have, despite very early on saying they won't attack healthcare companies or organizations, they have been attacking healthcare organizations. FBI had 250 ransomware events reported in 2023, which is the most out of the 16 industries. I would say that's also reported to the FBI, so there might be more that just wasn't reported to the FBI. So the timeline for this proposal is it was released January 6th. They have given 60 days for comment. So that will be March 7th is when they're going to when they'll stop accepting comments. So this gives health organizations to look at the proposal, kind of give feedback to it, which is why I'm going through it to understand, particularly for working security awareness is my focus, how that's going to impact security awareness. In spring 2025, so afterwards, HHS will review, submit a comment to finalize the rule. And then from there, they will, institute, here's how long it takes for you to get it and get these new rules established. And we'll kind of talk about some of the outcomes of that. With 2026, a year later is when things should all be wrapped up for certain activities. And we'll talk about what those specific ones are. Any questions?
Who do you accept comments from, and how would you submit a comment?
So if you go to their website, and I have, there should be a link in the meetup in the description. I think on the YouTube channel as well too. You go there and pretty much just click on submit a comment, and these are all public comments too, by the way. So you can go there and just submit it, and then they'll review it. I haven't done it, so I don't know specifically how to do it, but there's just a website. They'll take your comments. The overview of the proposal. So the proposal introduces a series of measures designed to enhance the resilience of healthcare organizations against cyber threats. Key objectives: address the evolving cybersecurity landscape, ensure greater accountability for organizations handling EPHI, and then improve alignment with industry standards and best practices. A lot of reading through the document. A lot of this is based off of their engagements with the OCR, which is the Office of Civil Rights. So when a healthcare company essentially has a security incident and it involves EPHI, the Office of Civil Rights will come in and investigate, the controls you had in place. How did you respond to it? What mitigations or what after actions have you put in place? And then they fine people if they don't follow through on that. So a lot, and there's a lot of back and forth. There are legal battles based on this. So based on what I'm reading, and you'll hear throughout, is kind of the OCR has had some of these investigations, and people have wanted to argue with them about putting certain measures in place, or how way things are certain, how things are phrased, or the definitions, and how that kind of applies within the court of law. And so this proposal takes all that into consideration and is kind of making these changes. There definitely also seems to be, they reference NIST a lot, which I don't think that they did previously, but they've referenced NIST and the CSF 2.0 framework as far as something to follow and something to refer to. So essentially, if you're following NIST, then you'll be in a good shape from a security perspective, and any sort of, you need to defend yourself against any sort of actual security incident that occurred, that you had the right controls in place. So key changes to the proposal. This is kind of the meat of the presentation here. We'll talk about terminology and definitions like I just mentioned. Administered safeguards, physical safeguards, encryption and decryption, authentication, business associate agreements, and then new and emerging technologies. So these are... Go ahead.
You got to go back.
Why?
The bottom down there. The cyber...
Kayak? It's more like a sliver. It's like a sliver.
It's so
sliver
good on all of the other
kayak.
words, and it got down
Kayak.
there and just...
Yeah.
No, can't do it.
Dang it. I saw that. I was like, no one's going to notice that. Of course Adam knows that. I did generate a lot of these images with ChatGPT, so you get what you get. And if you do it from like a very wordy kind of thing, it likes to add those words, and you're like, remove all the words, and then it like even adds even more words, and you're like, no, I said remove all the words. It has gotten better at spelling though. Like, it spelled HIPAA correctly and it spelled security correctly. So you take your wins where you can. All right. Speaking of words, so these are all the different words that they are looking to modify or add. So the ones with pluses next to them are words that they're going to add. Everything else they are going to modify. And I'll just walk through these. Electronic media. So they're going to modify that to include recorded on and maintained or processed on. I don't want to dive into too deep of these. So if anybody has anything specifically they want to know more about, I will absolutely do that. But these are just kind of brief notes. Deploy, better define, deploy, and implement. Implementing policy and procedures different from implementing technical safeguards. So based on what I was reading, it sounds like they were getting away from, oh no, don't do that. No. Okay, thank you. That's how I did it. Okay, I'm an idiot. Whatever. All right, we're done. Sorry, distracted squirrel. Based on what I read is that the people were saying, oh, we've got policies and procedures, right? And that should be good enough. And so they never actually implemented the thing in the policy and procedure. So I think that's why they're doing that. So I actually, yeah, do you actually have them deployed? They're looking to modify the definition of security or security measures to clarify it can be applied to and in a system. So think of like so a firewall would be something too. So you can put security measures or security mitigations in place via like a firewall, but then you can also go another level at the server level. You can have another set of controls. So if you think about like cloud computing, there's usually like a network layer, and then there's like a server level kind of networking controls concept there. But that would be kind of the definition of that. So you can do it in a couple different places and not necessarily just one. They are, and Adam actually had, so I'm hoping he weighs in. Otherwise, he's already into his Elijah Craig. Is recognizing security incidents into 2 numbered paragraphs. And this is meant to clarify like what is an actual security incident.
I don't quite understand why they're doing this, but the bent is to split security incidents between those which are aimed toward compromising information, so stealing information from a system or destroying the information within the system, and those which are targeted at the system itself but aren't really focused on the information within the system or destroying the system, the information in the system, right? So whether it's a exfil and ransomware, that would be the first type. DDoS is to me the clearest example of the second type that they're aimed at, where you're disrupting the system that the information, the service is housed on, but you're not really, the goal of the attack isn't to disrupt any of the data. It's not 100% clear on me why they're making that differentiation, but they are.
Yeah. I think that'd be a good public comment. Like, what the hell are you talking about? To me, again, like I said, I feel like they've gotten into legal battles or word fencing that has made it so.
I could see if if you're going to have to do things like provide credit monitoring or other services for a data breach versus a DDoS. If it's all lumped together as the same thing and the playbook is that any security incident has these X, Y, and Z steps that have to be taken, then you may want to differentiate between those 2 different things.
That's fair.
Because they have very different outcomes and different ways to try and protect against them.
Yeah. Okay. Some other, they're going to add technical controls. This can be technical mechanisms and hardware, software, and firmware components, clarifying technical safeguards are used for enterprises. Technical safeguards. So technical controls is considered, technical controls is included in technical safeguards. So like technical safeguards is kind of the overarching. Again, we're in the administrative safeguards. We'll go to the physical safeguards, but so technical safeguards will have technical controls within it. And it's related to policies and procedures. Add technical asset, push for a more complete asset inventory is what it's looking for. Add threat, that's self-explanatory. clarify user, and this is another one that Adam and I were discussing a little bit. It's going to remove the entity because person has an entity already in it. So, which sounds a little bit backwards, but okay.
Boy, I'm going to resist the urge to advocate burning down our entire legal system and starting over. But all of this revolves around the fact that you can have an actual person versus a legal person, whereas an actual person is a human you could put in handcuffs and hold accountable for something, and a legal person is a legal entity that may be responsible for things but can't be held accountable for things. So a corporation, whatever the other legal construct you have, but it's not an actual person, but both of those qualify as user. So
yeah, to me it'd be entity under user, because you could have like service accounts, which is not necessarily a person, but I guess they're having person with the entity in it. It's still, again, it's trying to clarify one way or the other. I think they just got it backwards a little bit.
the service account did bad things. Book him, Dano.
Add vulnerability, which is it literally says go see NIST for their example. And then workstation, add examples of server, virtual devices, and mobile devices. I had a comment about workstation being like they should kind of break that up maybe a little bit, because when I think of a workstation, I think of like an actual desktop versus a server. But I guess a workstation could be a server. It's a whole thing. And I think what they're really trying to do with workstation is clarify that could be like a virtual desktop is really what they reference in there. Then the other ones, terminology here is like addressable. And I definitely, a lot of these two are based on the OCR investigation experience, and they call that out as addressable and reasonable and appropriate, which both have been kind of misunderstood as like optional. So in HIPAA, there's a lot of like, they want to make HIPAA flexible for like emerging technology, but then understand that because of certain environments that you can put in, it's reasonable to address this without a huge cost or shutting down care or things like that. But people have kind of taken that to the extreme, and they're like, well, we're just not going to do it. And it's like, no, you still need to do something, like some sort of mitigation, but you still need to, you still have to find some way to make it addressable. And people are just like, it's not addressable, so we didn't do it. So they're trying to correct some of that. They also, back in 2013, thought that people would go the extra mile. Well, shame on them. That's not how it works in companies.
Wait a minute. Is this the HIPAA framework has lost faith in humanity? Is that what this is?
That's what it sounds like.
How did they ever have any? How did they ever imagine, oh yeah, they're going to do all of the security things we suggest? Guys, it doesn't work like that. It's never worked like that.
I know. But yes, so that's why, again, they're cleaning up their verbiage. I think they're probably learning from it. It's like, we can't put words in here that give people an option. So, so essentially, and they call this out too, they're trying to set a floor, and essentially that floor shall be met. You shall meet that floor. Which is good, I think, for the healthcare industry, is that like you guys can't get away with saying addressable or reasonably and appropriate. So administrative safeguards, that was the terminology and definitions. There are a lot of them, by the way. So this is probably, I want to say, from like page 36 to no, I'm not going to guess on that. This is the beefy part of the going through, and you can see it's broken up into a lot of the different areas within an organization. I won't read through all those. I will go through my highlights though. So, and I will talk about a couple different ones. I don't go into all of them, but some of the ones that I thought were very interesting or had something really to highlight. I can make my David, I can go up a little bit more. I'm going to go up a little bit more, David, at this point. So you let me know if that's good or I need to turn it down. So I'll go through the ones that I found interesting as they apply to stuff I've seen in my career. So under technology asset inventory, OCR regularly finds that organizations don't know where all the EPHI is located. So that's not fun. So they're going to have 3 requirements for an actual asset inventory. You have to have a written inventory with technical assets, include tech assets that create, receive, maintain, and transmit EPHI, and that those that may affect EPHI. So what that means is if your servers containing PHI are on the same network as your point of sale systems, those point of sale systems now have to adhere to HIPAA controls. And you have to have an understanding of what those are. Like where is all your PHI, and then what is able to actually get to that same server. And included, you have to include the ID, the version, the person accountable, and the location. And then you need a network map of the movement of the PHI. So I imagine that's going to be an interesting conversation with a lot of organizations.
So maybe this is just my skewed view on things, or maybe I've always worked in I think I've only worked in a non-regulated private sector one time in my career. I've always worked in some sort of, I worked in a HIPAA environment when I started out. That requirement to me seems baseline. Like that doesn't seem above and beyond. And I feel like I've heard other people say that have worked in other sectors, oh, that's a lot of regulatory. And I'm like, but I don't feel like it is. Like if you look at NIST, I feel like they have similar, I won't say the same because they're not focused on PHI, but they have similar requirements, do they not? I mean, that's not that far off.
Yeah, they do, but there's nobody coming in saying we're going to cut your funding or we're going to fine you if you don't. Like the standard says you must, but nobody does. Like
Okay, all right.
I have never been in a place where, and admittedly, my resume is not like chock full of hundreds of companies. I haven't worked a ton of places, but I've never worked at a place where maintaining the network map was part of the job description. It was just a thing I did because I'm that kind of fucking nerd.
Yeah. Well, and you must update that network map now every 12 months or when the environment has changed.
God, that would be so much worse than just maintaining it.
Yeah. Well, so if you have a new technical asset added, you got to update the network diagram. Or the asset inventory, I'm sorry. The network map is part of the asset inventory. You have to have that. A new threat, merger and acquisitions, a change in the law, and then a security incident that affects EPHI. So you better have your network map updated after a security incident. Risk analysis. And you mentioned it, Corey, right? Follow NIST guidelines. And that's what I mentioned earlier is just like NIST has a lot, and they reference a lot of their guidelines around like how to do a risk analysis. They're saying just go to NIST and use that, and you'll be good. And that you're expected to do it once every 12 months. Patch management. I think they're finally starting to set SLAs. So in my experience, talking to other organizations, we've kind of set our own, which was based on like reasonable expectations. They are now saying a critical is supposed to be addressed in 15 days and a high in 30. I couldn't find where they actually went into medium or lower, but I mean, if you address those, then you're going to be in a really good spot. And then you have to document any sort of exceptions. Actually, I think I should add that as a comment too. Where's my notepad? Just thinking about it is that you should review the exceptions every 12 months. You should never have an exception into perpetuity.
It's what they are, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'll have to double check to see if they have that in there. Exceptions reviewed yearly. So yeah, the way I've built vulnerability management programs, And the way I've always approached it is that, hey, we can give you an exception, but you got to tell me when you're either going to get rid of the server or you're going to like update the server, or when are you going to get this done? And they're like, well, we can't do it. It's like, all right, cool. We'll add it to the exception, but we're coming back in 12 months to go like, what's the current status? Can you do it? And so essentially you're going to be like a person that just bugs people, right? And I think that would be a good approach to making sure that exceptions just don't fall by the wayside. Assigned security responsibility. So they want you to actually document who's responsible as like the security officer. That could be your CISO. That could be, it sounds like in a lot of health organizations, that could be the CIO because you don't have a CISO. But they are saying you have to have someone pretty much held accountable for implementing this security rule. Workforce security. So again, a lot of this is IAM, least privilege. Also, if you terminate users, terminate their actual account and like get rid of all their access. Job description review, which in my view is unreasonable to go through all the job descriptions. The idea of going through the job descriptions is that you can then set up permissions based on that role and what they actually need access to. But
this is wildly dangerous. You're telling me I have to know what devices are on my network, what data is in my network, where it moves, who my employees are, and what they do with the company.
Yeah, you must know all the things.
I'm terrified.
Show me this organization. I want to see it. Show it to me.
I'm with you.
Where is it? Where is it? And I don't know. I don't know if I do want to work there or I don't want to work there. I don't know which one it is, but I just want to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you.
I want to go on a tour.
Yeah.
I'll decide after.
Again, I'm with you. I think their job description review is a bit ridiculous. And if you've seen some job description reviews, that some of them are ridiculous. They
only have one employee.
Well, then you should have no problem getting that implemented then, huh? But yeah, I'm kind of with you guys on that. And I had no idea this existed. They also reference NIST as the hiring guidance. So NIST has a hiring guidance, I guess, guide or whatever to like, how do you hire people and how do you deal with that, which I think is good. And probably a direct relation to the North Korean news that's, hit the news cycle the last 6 months. Information access management, follow NIST guidance for policies and procedures. Again, that goes back to IAM. Security awareness training, which again, like I said, is my area. Set cybersecurity performance goals. So and how I view this is increasing like report rate, getting people trained up. In healthcare, I'll say, having gone through some OCR stuff, like you really have to be on top of like after an incident, making sure people have been trained on HIPAA and security concepts and things like that. So really need to make sure all that's in order, and that can be part of your performance goals.
Did the threat actor complete their security awareness training? Please attest.
Yeah. Well, and in healthcare, I think it gets overlooked a lot is the fact that it's actually more internal people doing stuff than external people. There are external people, attackers trying to get in, do ransomware, things like that. But oftentimes it's either malicious or unmalicious, access to information or, sharing of information outside the organization from your internal people that gets you in trouble. New hire training must be completed within 30 days. That's pretty standard. Do you guys have new hire training for security? Specifically?
Part of our onboarding process for new employees for us. Yes.
Is that just a presentation or is that like a set of videos that they have to go?
It's in an LMS, so they have to basic video. Well, I say video. It's the ones that are security specific are all text based by and large, and there might be video components to it, some audio, but yeah, it's a course that has to be completed. Then with a quiz, 10 answers. It's what you would expect, right?
Gotcha. Yeah. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Somebody, what was the comment in the chat? I can't see it. I know somebody commented.
Belina said, yes, required to complete video and test. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. Belina is correct pronunciation. Yeah. I appreciate that. But We use, the name is escape Nova4 out of Clearwater, Florida, that does the trainings and tests for us. And legitimately, our CEO has decided, and it's a not-for-profit organization, that if people don't complete it within the required time, that they're terminated.
Wow.
Just because he says it's so basic, and they have actually had a breach through email. So he takes it very seriously, and he feels that if you can't do the basic request of the president, that you don't need to be there.
Is that 90 days or 30 days?
No, you had to 14 days. 14 days from your date of hire.
Wow.
So
They don't mess around.
2 work weeks. I kid you not, there was someone that came in and they were like, they did the orientation for a day and then they had to go out for already scheduled that they weren't going to be available. They had a medical procedure and were required to log in and do all of this stuff before the 14 days. Because it is if you don't hold up to it because he reported to the insurance company, and that's, some of these risk assessment things you have to take seriously because there are financial blowbacks if you haven't been doing everything that you told the insurance company who is got your cyber liability coverage that you told them that you were doing. If you're not doing it, they don't reimburse you, and it's very expensive. Just doing the research alone is very costly. So.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
but he takes it seriously.
Yeah. Tom, you had something?
Yeah, hey, Tim. When I served as CISO of a 400-person company, we did onboarding every Monday morning. And I carved out 20 to 30 minutes of my Monday morning. That way I could meet every new employee or every new threat, and they could meet me as well. I could set the standards. I could do a little bit of scare tactics with, hey, the guy got fired for leaving his laptop in the truck. And this other guy did this and he got promoted. Just given a level of, for me as the CISO, I thought it was important to go ahead and build that. Now, they still had to go through the onboarding know before and their monthly stuff and our twice a month phishing, but I tried to make a personal connection there. And I showed a slide that had all these big companies like Home Depot and Dunkin' Donuts. And I said, those big companies can absorb a hit. I said, we can't. And I don't want any of you people here to be the reason I'm not getting my paycheck. So let's go ahead and get this established right now that we're going to have a good security culture and we're all part of it. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep. For better or worse, the most pressing threat to most organizations from a security standpoint isn't a random hacker. It's somebody coming in from an insurance company doing an audit and finding something that the insurance company doesn't like.
Yep.
Because there's actual dollars attached to that.
Yep. Cool. Well, everyone, thanks for sharing. The last one I have here is regular training on new tech, and they call out like a new EHR system, which to me is a little interesting. Like I'm supposed to, I guess maybe it's a training them on like how to actually use the EHR system and like not go look at records that they're not supposed to or download records they're not supposed to. I know that one was a little, huh? I mean, it sort of makes sense, but it's also okay. We have to train on all new tech now, which, what does that mean? So. Physical safeguards. So they said that organizations believe policy and procedures are enough. This proposal is meant to address that, and that they pretty much, again, have to actually put in and show that they've operationalized the physical security safeguards that they say they're putting in place. Shredding documents, this to me is like shredding documents, accessing different parts of an organization that might contain like PHI or printed out PHI. So essentially they have to have a written policy and then somehow demo that it is in effect. And then role-based training for physical security of machines. So that's pretty much, don't leave your computer unlocked, which should be part of really any part of security awareness program or training. Encryption and decryption. So they are taking a harder stance on encryption, and I didn't realize this was a thing, that they're pretty much saying, yes, you must have encryption. Back I guess I just forgot that in 2013, encryption was not as widespread. And they actually considered it not reasonably inappropriate. So they didn't necessarily say you had to put encryption in place, but you had to put in other mitigating controls. Now they're saying you should have encryption in place. The bar is so low now for encryption that it should be in place, and it is reasonably inappropriate to implement. This does lead to the question of legacy devices. If you worked in healthcare, there's legacy devices all over the place. Some of them are no longer supported by their companies because their companies have gone out of business. So you can have an exception for a legacy device, but the manufacturer must still be providing updates. Otherwise, you must have a plan to place, which I applaud this because it actually forces companies to update their legacy devices that they'll try to keep that have like Windows XP on them, right? Or use Windows XP. Corey, go ahead.
I had an MRI done recently. They put the images from the MRI on a DVD. They burned it to a DVD. And I said, can I get these in my EMR? It was, I forget what it's called. Anyway, can I get them in the portal? They said, yeah, the place where the MRI did the MRI can put it on a disc for you. I'm like, no, never mind. I'll handle it myself. Thank you.
That's not. No.
Is that all you said? That's all you want to say, Adam? No.
That's not an EMR.
That's not an EMR. You're right. Windows XP box is now an EMR.
You basically handed it to me on a piece of paper.
That's your EMR. That's the most secure EMR. It's on paper. You can burn it.
Nay, sir. If it were on a piece of paper, I could have looked at it or read it. If it's on a DVD, I have to find a Blockbuster that still has a VCR or the DVD player on it that I can actually look at it on.
You can scan a piece of paper to be a soft copy. You have to find a drive to actually put the DVD in.
You might as well have put me at the foothills of Mount Everest and said, climb, sir, climb. I can do that faster.
Oh, my God. Is this progress? I don't know.
Well, and that's what this is supposed to do, is get rid of that system. It's like, if you still have DVDs, you might think about updating or getting rid of that system or updating your system, which again is going to cost healthcare companies. I'm sure executives are going to look at it and go, oh, that's going to cost a lot of money, which should. I mean, these are going to just continue to be problems, and people just want to keep kicking the can down the road. So I think it's good that they're trying to force a lot of these legacy devices out of the ecosystem. And then, yeah, as I mentioned, apps and encryption controls must have mitigating controls. So this can be like firewalls or, access controls, lists, things like that can mitigate some of that.
Hold on, sorry. Going back to the end of life support for device, software, whatever, does it call out if that support has to be provided by the primary company or if it can be provided by a third party, i.e. are they creating a secondary market for providing support?
It calls out the manufacturer must still be providing updates. So I would say whoever is manufacturing the device and not a third party.
So first party. Okay. I just interesting thought. I was beginning to develop a whole secondary market in my head for this third party that comes along, go, hey, you can buy a support contract with us, and ta-da, you're back in compliance.
Yeah. But I mean, they're taking on a lot of legacy devices that they actually have to do updates. They don't call out how often the updates need to occur, right? And so it could be like once a year. But yeah, I mean, people will probably still find a way around it. But yeah, it specifically calls out the manufacturer. Authentication. Eliminate default passwords. So pretty standard. And then require MFA. Do not call out specific MFA like SMS or anything like that. There are MFA exceptions. Those are FDA approved devices. So if it's FDA approved, you don't have to have MFA on it necessarily. I think it probably will have some sort of control in there, but Any other MFA exceptions will have to be reasonably compensated controls, again, such as access control, and that can be network or physical based, right? So people can't get to this if this server's locked up here, not on the network type of thing. Business associate agreements. I'm going to preface this with a little bit that I'm not a third-party risk person. This is usually in third-party risk and in compliance. Adam, are you familiar with BAAs as far as like what they actually are? Essentially, how I understand them is they are an agreement between you and a third party that pretty much your information is going to be taken care of and protected properly. But I don't know if Adam or anybody else has some more in-depth insight than that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it spells out kind of the it explicitly lays out the how and like what controls are going to be put in place and all that, and like it gives you, instead of me just saying, Tim, I'm going to protect your data, it's Tim, I'm going to protect your data in X, Y, and Z ways with these controls in place and these sort of deliverables that you can expect, so that when I fail to do that, you can go back to the contract and hit me over the head with it. And presumably some lawyers. Yeah.
So essentially what they're saying you have to add to your BAAs is a 24-hour notice of incidents. So if you have a BAA with a third party, they have 24 hours to notify you that they had an incident, which that's going to be interesting.
I didn't pay attention to the language, but it's occurring to me suddenly. 24 hours of an incident occurring or 24 hours of them noticing that an incident occurred? Because
you have to provide 24-hour notice of an incident. So once you've identified an incident, you have to notify your third parties or the people that you're interacting with.
That's interesting because normally even executives aren't finding out within the first 24 hours.
Yep. But it has to be in contract. So essentially you have to let people know. I get the timeline too. I think some of these timelines are aggressive and they might adjust it back. But I mean, I like it because again, if a third party with your PHI has an incident, they need to let people know, and they might not even have the full picture and what's in the notice. So yeah,
they've got ground to stand on there though, because if I recall correctly, the OCC has a similar requirement, and it's the language in it. Adam, you hit on the key point, right? Is it from the time the threat actor got in, or is it from the time that the security team discovered it, or is it from the time that the CERC, if you have a corporate incident security response team or something like that, that group of executives got together and then they said, yes, this is an incident. Is it 24 hours from then? My experience is the last one, which is that big group of people finally gets together and goes, hey guys, I think we actually got something here. Everybody goes, uh-huh. And I mean, by that time, there's been days worth of discussion internally, maybe a week, and they're ready to disclose at that point. I mean, that's, like I said, that's been my experience, but it's how, I think it's almost one of those things that you can describe yourself. You set that definition yourself as to when you have discovered the incident to when you have to notify. But yeah.
Tom, go ahead.
And that's what I was going to say is, if you have a good, well-written policy that has what that trigger or threshold is and who can declare an incident, then you have a very clear definition of when the incident starts. All of that stuff from when the bad guys first got in to when you finally found out or even figured out what was going on, as long as you write a good policy, you cover yourself.
Sage advice there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. They are going to have to give additional time. They are given additional time for updating contracts. So pretty much, I think a lot of these rules, other security rules, will have to go and pray. Like they're going to say, like, you have to get this in place by this date. For these contracts that might have to be redone, they're giving up to a year based on the date that the implementation occurs. And if you don't need to renew the contract, then you don't have to, if it's not planned to renew, then you don't have to worry about it. And really it gives like an opportunity for when renewals come up, that's when you want to redo that contract. And then plan sponsors who have not been held to the security rule will have to put controls in place going forward. So that's a bit of a change because they do have access to PHI, and I guess they weren't held to the HIPAA security rule before. New and emerging technologies. The first one they talk about is quantum computing, which to me was very interesting to see that there. And I feel like I've seen some more recommendations around starting to have a conversation. And that's all they talk about. They don't say you have to solve for quantum computing, but you must start having a conversation about quantum resistant cryptography. That means putting in a roadmap, start having vendor discussions, conduct an assessment, and then inventory everything that might be impacted by quantum computing. Belina, go ahead.
I was curious because Deloitte has really been all over the quantum computing, and they said that there are threat actors that are trying to gather data and information. They're hacking systems to get that private information, but hold on to it for 5 to 10 years when the quantum computing is expected to have materialized for people to be able to actually use it well, and then use the information at that point in time. So they're telling people that they need to take into consideration security measures for future use of the data. And that's just really kind of very abstract for me to understand.
Yeah, no, absolutely. For people that don't know, like quantum computing is essentially, there's a lot of math, there's super math, and it's going to be able to crack all of our encryption, essentially. So that's why they're wanting people to start thinking about quantum resistant cryptography. And I don't know what that means either. So like you said, it's a very abstract thing.
Bigger numbers and much harder math.
Yeah.
It's a fun YouTube rabbit hole if you're interested. Go down the quantum rabbit hole on YouTube. Yes, anyway.
Yeah.
Would you say make a quantum leap?
Yeah, wait until about 10:45 when you're sort of tired and ready for sleep, and I'm outing myself as a night owl, I guess, but wait until later in the evening when your brain's not working 100%, and then go down that rabbit hole and be completely befuddled before bed.
No, that sounds like a good way for me to fall asleep. Yeah, Scott Bakula. Thank you. Someone got that reference.
I'm kind of surprised that that's an approach any threat actor group is taking. I mean, I guess it takes all kinds, but like, given the data broker ecosystem and the way all of this information, like my social's been breached, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 times at this point. Like, you guys don't have a copy of it already? Like, did you need more? You need a fourth copy? I don't know. It's odd to me that they would be breaking into places, stealing encrypted data, and then sitting on it, hoping that they get some magic key that unlocks it later down the road.
So that actually was one of the concerns with the LastPass password vault data breach, is that they would sit on those because there was no reason not to. Nobody, in the web world requires you to change passwords. So
that's fair. And I guess if there are secrets there for internals to the app, like private keys for SSL certs and things like that, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Thanks for thinking through that with me, because I was like, why?
Yep. AI. There's a NIST AI risk management framework out, so they reference that. Again, they said inventory all the places that you have AI. And then they also talk about VR, so virtual reality. And that's pretty much have a proper BAA in place and then follow risk management, patch management, and identity management for VR. So they recognize that new and emerging technologies can really help with care for people, but again, starting to think about some of the security ramifications of something like that comes out. They reference VR being used for like surgeries and stuff, so a doctor doesn't necessarily have to be there, but can still be in the room, I guess, and do like a virtual reality headset. Impact analysis. So they do, and they're required to do an impact analysis of how much this costs. There's a lot of math there, and they dive in. I only have one table to really share some of the more interesting insights, but they break down. They pretty much break down how they came up to the costs I'm going to talk about here. They said it will cost, and this is all health organizations across the board, $6.8 billion in annual costs. So, Corey, to your point about markets starting to spin up, I was like, oh, this is totally going to start up some other vendors that are going to do, if this is implemented, certain things within the new security rule to, get some of that $6.8 billion. They did say that if across the board they reduce breaches by 7 to 16%, the proposal pays for itself. Now, if you dig into the math on that, it can go anywhere from 30 to 50% depending on large organizations. But that 7 to 16% is across the board. They did not include in the estimate the legacy device replacement cost, so that number could be significantly higher if you start throwing in replacement for legacy devices. But they had really no way of, I guess, really being able to calculate that. For organizations that haven't put anything in place or need to start putting, or they said the first year of implementing the proposed changes in place, it's $4.655 million for each organization in the first year. The cost of a breach, and this is where they're basing it on, like, again, working backwards now, like how the math applies. The cost of a breach is $10.95 million per organization, which is the highest of any industry. And they talk about the 5 activities that would reduce cost, which is encryption, pen testing on an annual basis, multi-factor authentication and terminated access to EPHI, increased employee training, reducing non-compliance with regulation. And this would reduce breaches by 23.6% if you put in the new security rule. Go ahead, Tom.
So pen testing on an annual basis, I guess that's better than nothing. But what is the room's thought on that? Because as I talk to my clients, I say, you do that once a year, that's a 364-day prayer strategy. Because the day after we walk out of doing the pen test, who knows what vulnerabilities have popped up, or either externally or internally.
Yeah, I mean, if you can afford a internal pen test team, that'd be great. But I mean, that has a cost in itself.
Well, no, Tim, what I'm seeing more and more is pen testing as a service, even if it's only, here are the top 10 exploits or whatever, but doing it on a monthly or quarterly basis instead of once a year.
I mean, so I haven't dug in. I'm not high on the pen test as a service, because to me it's like that can, I don't know, I guess effort could be put into like actually doing vulnerability management properly and some of the other stuff that, you should have internal resources being able to identify some of your vulnerabilities internally, and the external, right, is meant to kind of check how you're doing. But I mean, to your point, yeah, doing it on a more regular basis, I think would be better, but that's like a pen test is not cheap. It's tens of thousands of dollars. And if you need a really good one, you're getting up to the 6 figures.
That's not what my MSP tells me, man. My MSP tells me that I can throw them an extra $50 every month.
And that's what I'm saying. You get what you pay for, and that applies to security.
But I have kind of 2 points that I wanted to touch on. One is, Tim, did they give any kind of parameters around what qualifies as a pen test for their purposes? Because to my point, I've seen MSPs offering a pen test that's Nessus. That's not a pen test, that's a vulnerability scan. Those are not the same thing. But do they provide any parameters in this? Is that part of this, or is that still just murky gray area they're leaving for next year?
I don't recall them calling out specifically what constitutes like an actual pen. That's kind of hard to define. And to your point, yeah, I've seen I've worked with a third party person. I've seen some really bad pen tests before.
Yeah.
So
And to jump back to the point Tom was making is the when you do continuous pen tests like that, are you getting any more value than you do with the annual pen test where you try and hit the whole network, or are you just breaking it up into 12 chunks and then handing it off to different teams to handle throughout the year? Like, does that? And I guess that it all comes back to you get what you pay for.
I've seen pen tests go from 8,000 up to 80,000. I'm never really sure what I'm getting in between.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll say, knowing some pen testers, like one of their biggest frustrations, because they deal with it with a lot of different clients, is they pretty much copy and paste findings from the previous year. So that might be what they really need to do. Maybe they say it in there. I don't recall them saying this specifically, but did you address the vulnerability from the previous year? Because a lot of pen testers I know are just like, yeah, I just go back into the same company and I checked the vulnerability I had the previous year and it still works.
Right. And do you keep looking after that? Like, or you just like, okay, well, you're not going to do anything with whatever I find anyway.
Right. And that's the frustrating for people I've seen on the pen test side is they like the organizations that actually fix their stuff and that they can take to the next level. But if there's no remediation or no follow up, and what constitutes a good pen test? Because I can have 3 different really good pen test companies and they're all going to find a different thing because they have different ways of approaching that kind of stuff.
Yeah. they theoretically all have different pen testers with different skill sets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
So I guess that sort of reinforces the point that fundamentals are important. And are you actually following up on what your tools are telling you, what you're like, when you know about something, are you actually chasing people down and fixing it? Or are you going, hey, server guys, here's a vulnerability, go fix that, and wandering off to the next audit, the next whatever your day job is, and trusting that they're going to fix it?
Yeah. And a lot of organizations will budget for an assessment, but they don't ever budget for whatever needs to be done after the assessment, which there's going to be something.
The remediation may be expensive.
This is as I mentioned, this is like I said, it goes into greater detail, but this is the data breach or the table for data on breaches of EPHI from 2018 to 2023. You can see the affected individuals has increased pretty by tenfold. Or no, that's not tenfold. That's 5. I don't know how to math. Go ahead, Adam.
Whoever laid this out is a monster.
It's government work, man. What do you expect?
I understand. I'm just saying these tables are a nightmare. Why would you lay this out this way?
Well, at least they didn't use a pie chart. Again, I won't show you too much. That's pretty much it. Thoughts? Any questions? Like I said, it was a really interesting read. I like that the direction they're going, as we've kind of discussed here. I definitely think there are some remaining questions. And if you want to comment, go comment, read it. I can drop notes here if you guys want to see specific pages for stuff. I have a PDF too that you can reference if anyone's interested, with highlight marks of where I highlighted stuff that I found interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say, I know I joked throughout the presentation, really good presentation. Look, they got to do something, right? You got to keep moving the baseline forward. And a lot of times compliance is the only way to do that. That defines the bottom dollar that you're talking about as a motivator, for better or worse. It is probably the primary motivator for most of the stuff. So, hey, look, good on them for updating it. Good on them for having more requirements.
Yep.
The wolf may come to your door, but the tax man will. So, which one are you going to prepare for?
Yep.
Hey, Tim, did they have any conversations about or any pieces about covered entities and what how they define covered entities?
I'm sure they did. I didn't. As far as like the definitions and terminology that we were talking about, I didn't see, and I also did not read through the new HIPAA proposal. I read through the proposals that they were going to make.
Jeff, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to cop out because I'm going to tell you that I absolutely did read that. It's in there. I could not tell you what any of it meant. I remember reading it and understanding it in the moment, but I didn't commit it to memory enough to be able to articulate it now.
Fair enough. I know we have some areas that were at the university that they basically decided to kind of get rid of when they had some changes to HIPAA about covered entities in the past. And basically it was like they had on-site childcare that was free, but it was a non-covered entity, and then it was going to become a covered entity. And they were like, well, the cost of becoming a covered entity, we can take that money and, find something else to do with it and just not have this service. So it actually lost some services on campus that were beneficial to people because the cost was just so high.
Yeah, I think that's plausible. So my takeaway from all that I've read on this, and Tim's read a hell of a lot more. So Tim, feel free to tell me I'm full of shit if you disagree. But my takeaway from all of this is all of their points of clarification and all of the changes they're making are intended to eliminate spaces where people were where organizations were skirting around the spirit of the requirements and like basically taking away your, oh, well, we didn't feel like we needed to do that because of X. Like there's none of that. You don't get to say, oh, well, we have this separate piece of our network where we handle PHI, so that's the piece that we have a network inventory for. No. It's all one information system. You don't get to like say this is a special enclave. It's like if you can get to it from this desktop, that desktop is part of the network, and you don't get to wiggle around that. And that organizational distinction you're talking about, I think, is going to also bring some entities into the scope of HIPAA that previously were like, oh, we're not really under we don't really have the HIPAA onus on us. It's on you. We're just doing services for you.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it, and I think that's kind of the intent for a lot of this stuff. So, and there are a lot of health organizations that are doing a really good job, and then there's ones that are doing the bare minimum, like they're not doing a whole lot. They don't have a CISO. They have like 2 security people for hundreds of thousands of records.
They're paying an MSP for a virtual CISO.
That's unfortunately that's also in the broader spectrum. I think where a lot of the world is going, or a lot of the organizations are going, is kind of, it's hard to find people, and so if you can outsource it, look at the MDR market, right, where a lot of SOCs now are kind of just a third party as far as like at least a tier 1, tier 2, and then they notify someone internally to do further investigation.
Oh,
That's a
one better,
virtual
one better
CISO.
An AI CISO. There you go. That's better than an MSSP CISO.
And as a virtual CISO, I am not a full-time CISO. I don't own their risk even more. Just saying, and I'm held a level of responsible less for things that I don't control. So I think that you're seeing more companies go that way because they can't find the CISOs because people don't want to be a CISO.
Yep, I can see that. That'll be interesting then in that regard of like, who is your security officer? Going back to, here's the person responsible. Is that your virtual CISO, or is that, and I imagine in your case, Tom, it's like, well, I'm not going to take that on. It's going to be someone internal that, CIO or somebody.
So New York's Department of Financial Services, if you're a bank, credit union, or mortgage, they require a named CISO. It can be a virtual, does not have to be a staff person.
Oh, okay.
I just like the idea of some group of people sitting around in a meeting going, should we, I think we're worried about security on this. Should we call Tom and get his opinion? It's like, if you have to ask, I mean, the answer is probably no.
All right. Cool. Well, that is the presentation.
Oh, I don't want to let it end here. If we end here, you'll get to go eat dinner.
Yeah. What do you want to?
I've already had my burrito, so
Do you-
I can sit here all night keeping you away from your food.
Should we stream HOTS on the Explore Site channel? Is that what you're saying?
A wonderful idea.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you for your time, for your presentation.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks,
President.
thanks.
Tim.
Thanks
Thanks, y'all,
everyone.
for coming out. Fun.